We have just enough time for a couple of questions as we try to get the video working.
Okay. Larry Neinstein, Los Angeles, USC. I have a question that is a real question that just came up. It overlaps young adults, STIs, risk behaviors, the law, and social networking. So this is a real situation. A student, ex-student at university created a website that is for, it's almost a dating service, but with an STD focus. So he wants individuals to electronically fax over their STD results, including HIV tests. We've said no, we'll give it to the student. He's pushing it with a legal case or a legal issue with at least a lawyer about it be a HIPAA violation. So I don't think the federal government nor Sacramento has actually dealt with that specifically in sort of social networking sites, but I was wondering your thoughts. And am I just over 35? and considering it strange.
You know, Larry, you sort of brought some idea like this up yesterday, and I was thinking about it, and from a public health perspective, part of me says, from a young adult, it makes sense, because in a sense, at least they're saying, hey, I've been tested and I'm safe, and so, you know, I have a condom and I have an obvious safe test. But certainly as a health promoter and as a researcher and somebody, I don't know what to say. You know, there are lawyers in the audience that could probably speak to it more, but to me, it's just another example of young adults trying to, and not realizing how much harm there could be, even though they're in some ways trying to do it to show that they're safe, but how much harm there could be in just promoting and advertising and putting on their profiles, and where that's going to go and where that's going to go when they're older. So it worries me, aside from the legal side, but I don't have any data on it.
Hi, my name is Andrea Vessel. I have two really quick questions. The first is about social media and marketing. I just want to know what your take is on kind of the effect of having a digital trail and causing discrimination or bias. So I'm not specifically talking about people that have alcohol in their pictures, but people that just share a lot of information about themselves and other people being able to access that, and what that can do if you can know so much about a person before you see them, that being peer-to-peer relationships, young adults to employers, and how that can cause discrimination or bias if you're trying to get a job or just in terms of socialization. So that was my first question.
Thank you. I think that's a really good question, and it brings up a good point, which is that a lot of times within social media research, we tend to think about the freedom of information and the opportunity to display and how wonderful that all is, but for vulnerable populations or for populations that are historically discriminated against, it's a different story, and it's definitely one that is approached with a much more cautious outlook. And so I think that's something that we have kind of tended to overlook, that there are issues. I can think, for example, of one of the stories that came up when I was interviewing a young man who was had undocumented family members, and his mother asked that he not go on Facebook because he didn't want that she didn't want that information shared so that their family could be found. Another instance that comes up sometime is young people who are from situations where there has been abuse in the family and the family has left to try to go to another area. It's much more easy now to find people who don't want to be found. And so these are some kinds of issues that are new, I think, to our situation. And I think that it's something that for young people, we need to try to continue to emphasize issues of ethics and respect for one another, and for trying to elaborate that throughout a variety of different kinds of approaches. But I think that you raise a really good question, and it's something that we need to pay attention to. Thank you.
I'll save my question since other people want.
We're actually going to take a quick minute and try to show Lynn's video. And do we have time for one quick question after that without cutting too much into the break time, or maybe use that time to have just one quick question after that? Okay.
Of Ethiopia, my family and I faced another war, the Eritrean-Ethiopian War. Thousands of civilians caught in the middle of the war zone. My father dug an underground tunnel for protection from the bombs going on. When the bombs went off, we could feel the ground shaking. We just prayed that we lived to see another day. Day after day, bombs went off. We prayed it would stop, but it did not. That's when my father knew it wasn't safe for us to stay in the hideout. We gathered my family, cousins, and friends and planned our escape. At sunrise, it was quiet and peaceful. We snuck out the deep trees, silent, afraid, hoping and praying. We walked and walked. That was the day I wanted time to go slow, but time was going fast. The night was approaching. The shooting, the bombs were about to start. Boom! The first shot was fired. I saw the bullets up in the sky going back and forth. My family shaking in fear. The ground was shaking. The smell of gunpowder in the air. The night, no one fell asleep. The next morning, we came out of the trees. My mother kissed the ground. Thankful to see another day, she said. 7 years later, we got a chance to start a new life. We were called the lucky family because most of Ethiopian families don't get to have a second chance. To this day, I see images when I'm sleeping, but I don't take anything for granted. Sometimes I wonder if I would be the same today had I not experienced hardship, but I doubt it. Today, I'm graduating from high school and going to a 4-year university. This would not have been possible growing up in Eritrea or Ethiopia. My past made me stronger. It keeps me going. It keeps my dreams alive.
Thank you, Doug, for getting that to work.
I'm Barbara Schneider from Michigan State University. I just have one comment before the break. I really enjoyed this because it's so much on the cutting edge of everything that's going to go on and how it's so much altering the lives of young adults today. But I wanted to make one cautionary statement. We have so few studies on the impact of what this is doing to young people's lives that I think if we hold something up as an example, that this is a benefit, that we see a benefit for this or we see a disadvantage for that we have to be really very cautious. We have to look very carefully at the kinds of studies that are being done, the kinds of evidence that's being reported, the effect sizes that are coming out of these kinds of, whether or not it's, did they have 100 students? Did they look at it, across, multiple different types of analytics that are that we use to look at media? I'm worried right now that we may quickly move to an imbalance of what's good and what's not good. And I just wanted to caution us all because it's certainly something that I think about a lot.
Well, thank you for that. And you're right. I mean, I think that we don't know very much about what's happening with social media. We're all trying to play catch up. And I think that's one of the challenges and one of the reasons why we want to have this conference and this conversation is that none of us have the answers and none of us are trying to say this is the right way to go or the wrong way to go. But we do know that we need to do something and we need to be able to explore the ways in which young people are experiencing their lives in a variety of different ways. And we need to see how these technologies are playing a role in their lives, and because they are. And so we want to try to figure out ways to create not only interventions, but ways of thinking, frameworks. We need frameworks for thinking about how these things relate to one another. And so I appreciate the opportunity to be here and to be able to have learned from you about the expertise that you've had on these issues related to families and to young people and thinking about how technologies fit into their lives in a variety of ways. And so I'm glad that we've had this opportunity to talk, and I appreciate your insights.
Well, I want to thank everyone for their questions and their attention, and of course our panelists for illuminating and expanding our understanding. Let's take a break, and I invite you to converse directly with our panelists as well.